Welcome to Hubs and Drivers, a podcast for building product marketers, sponsored by BLD Marketing. I'm your host, Jeff Donaldson. On this episode, cookie deprecation. You know, when you hear the word cookie, you think of one of those treats you might like, whether it's a chocolate chip cookie or any other kind of cookie. Those aren't the ones we're talking about today. We're talking about the digital cookies, and those are the files that are created when you visit a website or anytime you are online. Those cookies are critical for building materials manufacturers to track their prospects and to provide them with information when they're online. The rules are about to change with something that's called cookie deprecation. And joining us today for some insight on that is Amy Meyers, Director of Paid Media for BLD Marketing. Amy, thanks for joining us today.
Happy to be here, Jeff.
So let's break it down. What are cookies when it comes to being online in the digital world, so to speak?
So cookies are small files that are placed on your browser when you go to a specific website, and websites use them to monitor your behavior and follow your activity as you're online. So whether that's your laptop, your mobile phone, your tablet. And they remember things like, what is your login information? What is your zip code? That kind of information. And there's multiple kinds. There's two kinds in particular that we're concerning ourselves with. There is first-party cookies and third-party cookies. And first-party cookies are just exactly what they sound like. I go to a website, it places the information on there to remember things, like, as I said, like your login information.
And that eases the journey for people when you go to a website that you visit quite often, because then you don't have to type in your password every time.
Right, you like that. It's the third-party cookies that are causing the problem, right? Those are the ones that are put on your browser by advertisers. And they do things like monitor your behavior and then start to make suggestions to you. So we're all familiar with, maybe I went online and I was researching where I wanted to go on vacation. I opened multiple browser tabs, and I'm looking at different hotels, I'm looking at bathing suits, I'm looking whatever, and then that information starts to appear while you're searching in the days following, the weeks following, based on other sites you were on. So it's monitoring your behavior and it's making suggestions. And it's supposed to feel very user-friendly. But now we feel like it's an invasion of our privacy instead.
And in many ways, those third-party cookies are critical for marketers, building product marketers, marketers of all kinds. Talk a little bit about that. Why are they so valuable as a tool?
Because we can then identify who you are based on your behavior, right? So we know the kinds of sites you like to go on, we know the activities you're engaged in, and then we make assumptions based on that information. What is your career? What is your job function? And then we're able to target you with what we think are very on-point messages, right? So again, thinking that we're making your user experience better. But again, privacy has come into play here, and maybe we're not all familiar with GDPR, which let me make sure I get that correct. GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation, which was instituted by the European Union in 2008. And so that is what we're all trying to live with now, where Europe said, we are here to make sure that your privacy as an individual
protection of privacy
is not invaded, and that includes when you're on the internet, which is, of course, this great wide open space that nobody has been really monitoring, and there isn't any institution or organization that's really out there making sure that people are following all the rules and regulations.
So cookie deprecation, it sounds kind of ominous. Let's break that down. What does it mean? Let's define it as it relates to building product marketers and how they're going to interact in a digital world.
Well, cookie deprecation means that we are going to cease having third-party cookies available to us as advertisers for targeting purposes.
They're going away.
They're going away. In fact, Safari and Firefox, which are the two other browsers, got rid of them like a year and a half ago. It's only Google, who has a lot of skin in this game, right, the advertising game, who is keeping it alive, trying to figure out ways they can become GDPR compliant, be respectful of your privacy, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. And in fact, we're still 2 years down the road. We're not going to see this cookie deprecation actually take effect until 2023, which is 2 years after Google was supposed to be rolling it out.
So it already would be in place in the original plan.
It would have been in place in the original plan, but we haven't found a solution that makes everybody happy yet. And of course, the last person that's probably going to be happy is the consumer. But, we're here to try and, follow these regulations, be as respectful of people's privacy as possible while still getting an on-point message out to our audience, our target audiences.
So when you take the third-party cookies off the table, that takes a tool out of a marketer's toolbox. What are the best practices and recommendations as we get ready for cookie deprecation? What should you do?
Well, be aware of what your vendor is utilizing when they're trying to create your target audience, right? So now what we're in is a situation where what replaces third-party cookies? And there are kind of 4 options that are on the table. The first option is what Google is trying to do in their privacy sandbox, which is create what they call advertising cohorts. So we put you into little pockets, these cohorts of like-minded people. We anonymize all the data, and therefore we say this group of people pretty much kind of closely matches who it is you're trying to target, and that's how we go about it. We lump everybody together into these cohorts. That may or may not be GDPR compliant. They're still working through that. And Google, they have one called FlowC, which is the federated learning cohort. They're still working things out, which is why this can has been kicked down the road repeatedly, right? So then there's another option, which I think is probably the better option, which is what's called the universal ID solution. So we anonymize all of your data by, they scrub it clean. So you're still getting some of that personalized information that you want, most of that personalized information, but they're doing it in a way where you're almost logging into the internet. So right now we're all probably familiar with these notifications that have come up that say, I accept your cookies.
Right.
And just like we do when we add an app to our phone, we just hit accept and away we go because nobody wants to read that. And even if you did read it, you probably wouldn't understand what it says.
It's complicated.
So you just accept it and have my cookies. It's great. In Universal ID, it's explained a little more clearly. You understand that what I'm logging into here is something that is going to allow more personalized advertising information. Because let's admit, nobody wants to pay for the internet, right? We get that for free. And the reason we get it for free is because advertisers advertise on the internet, right? So that's why we've been giving them our information. It's a really awful cul-de-sac that we've put ourselves in, to use one of your words. So there's universal ID. There's a third one, and that's called contextual targeting. And that's where I put my advertising in places that seem to make the most sense based on who I'm trying to target. So in the case of our target audiences, that would be places where it's about building and construction and the types of products those people are interested in. Contextual advertising or targeting has been around for a while. If it was all that, we'd all be using it. But it's one tool in the toolbox, if you will. It's not all in. And then finally, you have the IAB, the Internet Advertising Bureau, which I think is a little late to this game, trying to say, oh, can't we all just get along? And let's have this set of 4 rules that we'll all live by, and we agree to do all these things. That's never going to happen, but it's a nice thought. So we'll see what happens. So what should you do? You should make sure that whatever vendors you're utilizing probably have access to things like, there's a vendor called LiveRamp. It uses that universal ID situation where they're taking anonymized data. So you're still getting the targeting based on the personas that you're interested in, but in a way that is respectful of your audience's privacy.
So there's a lot to unpack here, and things are changing rapidly, but we still have a little bit of time before cookie deprecation officially takes place.
2023.
Absolutely. Amy Meyers, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
So as the rules evolve, you're going to need to evolve your digital strategy when it comes to targeting your prospects and customers online. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Hubs and Drivers. I'm Jeff Donaldson. Join us next time.